Okay, so now that I've shown you a little bit more about how objects and arrays can be stacked inside of each other, I want to revisit the reduce function. What I want to do is I want to reduce this entire array with a lot of arrays in it down to one object. That object, I want to have two objects inside of it, an A team and a B team, because some of these superheroes are A team superheroes and some of these superheroes are B team superheroes. I want to reduce it down so that it looks like an object like this. So each object is going to have an A. So this is the A team, and it's going to have a list of members. And it's going to be a list of everyone's name that's a member. And then it's going to be the total villains that the members of that team caught. Then I'm going to have the B team, and I'm going to list off their members and the total villains that they caught. So we can do this using a reduce function. So the way we do this is we're going to create our object. So I'll say let reduced data, or I'm actually going to call this data by team equal. And then what I want to do is I want to access the Justice League and I want to reduce it. So reduce takes a function. This function can take in a previous value and a current value. And then it needs to do some processing and then return a value. So what I want to do is first, the current value is going to be an item from this array. So if we want to grab information about this array, notice I'm storing their alias and I'm changing it by their total villains, and I need to know which team they belong to. So I'm going to destructure um, the array that I grab out of Justice League into variables so that my code's a little more readable. So I don't care about the first name. I don't care about the last name. I do care about the alias. Um, I do need their number of villains, so numvil, and then I do need their team. And I'm going to set that equal to current. So what this does is it destructures the array, pulls out alias, number of villains, and their team. Now, this previous object is eventually the object that I'm going to return at the end of it. So I want it to be an object that can be accessed by this data by team. So in other words, if this is an object, the first thing I want to do is I want to see if the team exists. So for example, in this Justice League, I want to see if there's already an A team and if there's already a B team. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say if team is in the previous object, meaning if by the time we've gotten to this point in our loop, if the object already exists, then what are we going to do with it? If it doesn't exist, then we want to create an object that looks like this. So how do we do that? Well, we'll say if it doesn't exist, then we want to go into previous at the team position, and we want to set it equal to an object. What's going to be in that object? Well, it needs a members key, which has an empty list. The other thing it needs is a total villains key, and it's going to start. And where do we want it to start? Well, if it doesn't exist, in other words, if we're adding Superman, then the first thing we want to do is instead of putting an empty list for members, we want to put Superman in that list. Where is Superman being stored? It's being stored in this alias. So we'll access the alias. Okay, total villains. Do we want to start it at 0 or do we want to start it at the number of villains Superman caught? If this is our first time accessing the object, then we just want to set it to how many villains Superman caught. And that is this numvil right here. So what we're saying is go into this giant object here and see if A exists. If it doesn't, create an object called A. Inside of that object, create a members key that stores an array and start it with Superman. Create a total villains and start it with however many villains Superman caught, which in this case is 12. And then start the loop over. Then grab the next team, next person. The next person is going to be Bruce Wayne, who's also on A team. Bruce Wayne is on A team, so rather than creating another A object, we just want to update the A object that already exists. And there are two things we want to do. First, we want to add his alias into the running list. And second, we want to update the number of villains with his villain count. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the previous object, access it by its team position, and then inside of that team, We want to access its members. And once we've done that, we can push in our alias. So what that does is it comes to this members list, which currently would only have Superman. And on the next time through, it's going to add Batman to that list. The other thing we want to do is we want to update total villains. So we're going to go to the previous object. We're going to access its team position. We're going to access its total villains position, and we're going to increase it by Batman's number of villains. And once we're done, we need to return the adjusted object. Okay, so that probably looks pretty complicated, but we're going to go put in a breakpoint, and I'll walk you through this line by line. So let's come over here to sources, and I'm going to put a breakpoint on this line right here where we do our reduce. So if we reload, we're about to run this Justice League reducer, and I realized we actually have a problem. So coming back over, this Justice League reducer is going to access this as the first object unless we tell it to start with something else. So coming to this reducer, I'm going to tell it to start with an empty object. So we're going to start with nothing, and then we're slowly going to build it. So coming over here, we'll reload the page, and it's going to pause. And we're about to start our loop. So we're about to assign previous and current. If we hit next, previous is an object with no properties, which makes sense. That's what we told it to start with. Current is our list, Clark Kent, Superman 12, and A. If we hit next, we've destructured it. So alias is storing Superman, number of villains is storing 12, and team is Superman is on the A team of the Justice League. So we're going to see if A is in our previous object. Right now, our previous object has no properties, so it's not. So we're going to skip to the else statement, and we're going to create that property inside of previous, and we're going to give it an object that has a members list and a total villains. If we hit next, now if we hover over previous, it has an A object. Inside of that A object, it has a members list. Inside of that members list, it's storing Superman. The other thing inside of the A object is total villains, which are now 12. So we're going to hit return for the previous, and it's going to start our loop over. Okay, what is in previous now? Well, it's the thing that we just built. What's in current now? It's Batman. So if we hit next, alias is Batman, number of villains is 20, and the team is A. So we're going to see if A is in the previous object. It is, so we're going to go into this if statement. So we hit next, and we're going to go into the previous object at the A position, and we're going to access its members, and then we're going to push in Batman. So we're going to go in here, open up members, add Batman. So if we hit next, and we go back to the object, we can now see that in members, there is Superman and Batman. The other thing we want to do is we want to access the total villains and increment them by 20. So if we hit next, now inside of A, we are storing that the members are Superman and Batman, and total villains is now not a number. Interesting. That means I have written some code here slightly wrong. So, and actually, you can see it. There are two keys. So this key is total villains with an I. This key is total villains or villains, and it does not have an I. So I'm going to go match the spelling here. Apologize for that. And then this will work as we expected. All right, so we'll reload the page. We're going to grab Superman. So previous is an object that's empty. This is an array that holds Clark Kent. We're seeing if his A team is in the previous object. It's not. So we're going to hit next. We're going to create it, and we're going to come back through. Okay, now we're grabbing Batman. We've got Batman, number of villains that he caught, and he's part of the A team. The A team is, in fact, in this object. So we're going to drop in, and we're going to push Batman into there. So now we have an A team object that has a members list that has Superman and Batman inside of it. The total villains right now is 12, but we're going to update them with Batman's 20. If we hit next and we hover over that previous object, if we open it up, we can see that our total villains is now 32. Now we're going to return that object and start our loop over. What is in our previous object? Well, that A object that we just built that stores Superman and Batman, and the total villains is 32. We're going to hit next, and now we've got Wonder Woman, who caught 15 villains and is part of the A team as well. So we hit next, we push Wonder Woman into the list. So now in our A object, we have a members list that has Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman, and a total of 32 villains. If we hit next and we return the previous, now our previous object has an A team, and inside of that A team object, there are members. That members object is a list which stores Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman, and they've caught a total of 47 villains. So I'm going to hit continue. Oops, that actually continued all the way through to the end of the code. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come here to line 38, reload, and I'm going to hover over data by team, and you can see that it is an object that has two objects inside of it, an A object and a B object. In the A object, it has a list of members of everyone on the A team, and the total villains they caught was 95. There's also a B object, and it has all of the members on the B team, and the total villains they caught was 65. And so by using reduce to return a single item, meaning this object, we could take this gigantic array with a lot of information and crunch it down to some very valuable numbers. Thanks for watching.